Hey everybody, let's talk about Pokemon. Because no one's done that before, right? Pokemon is most often thought of as having a pretty innocent and kid-friendly world. Despite that reputation though, many players have spent years discussing and coming up with theories about some of the game's darker undertones. Among such topics are the various Pokédex entries of certain Pokemon. While most of what's written in the Pokédex may just be a sentence or two detailing a little tidbit about how the Pokemon behaves in the wild, there are some that can just be flat out disturbing and really surprising to see in a kid's game. More often than not, most of these darker entries come from Pokemon that are ghost types. This is naturally because of the creepy and horror-esque themes that go hand in hand with the ideas that most people would have about ghosts. I myself have a big interest in the horror genre and love to see it mixed into other things in a real subtle way like this. So today I want to list my 10 personal favorite creepy ghost type Pokemon. The original Ghost Pokemon family has always been one of my favorites. Being the only of their kind at the time made them incredibly unique and fun to use. While my favorite Pokemon among them would ordinarily be Gengar, in terms of creepiness, I have to go with the middle child, Haunter. While Haunter may not look very threatening, its Pokédex entry should make you never want to go near one in real life. In total darkness, where nothing is visible, Haunter lurks, silently stalking its next victim. Its tongue is made out of gas. If licked, its victim starts shaking constantly until death eventually comes. It hides in the dark, planning to take the life of the next living thing that wanders close by. Although most of its entries make it seem like exactly what you'd expect from a ghost, I find the parts about how it actually kills people ties the whole thing together. While the more recent entries have toned it down a touch, it's still pretty creepy to imagine somebody shaking to death after coming into contact with it. Okay, now I swear, it's almost like what was written in the Pokédex for Gorgeist was accidentally switched with something else. Take a look at this. Singing in eerie voices, they wander town streets on the night of the new moon. Anyone who hears their song is cursed. It enwraps its prey in hair-like arms. It sings joyfully as it observes the suffering of its prey. Seriously, the first time I saw this Pokemon, I thought the Pokédex would say something about it giving out Halloween candy to kids or something. Heck, it even has a signature move called Trick or Treat. The idea of a singing, sadistic jack-o'-lantern wandering the streets at night is already creepy enough, but when those characteristics belong to something that looks as innocent as this, that just makes things all the more disturbing. When I first saw Jellicent, I thought it was nothing more than King Babam in the form of a jellyfish, but a little research reveals that there's a lot more to it. The fate of the ships and crew that wander into Jellicent's habitat? All sunken, all lost, all vanished. They propel themselves by expelling absorbed seawater from their bodies. Their favorite food is life energy. Its body is mostly seawater. It's said that there's a castle of ships Jellicent have sunk on the seafloor. While the idea of haunted spirits going around sinking ships isn't the most original thing I've ever heard, I find it creepy that it's the jellyfish who are responsible this time around. Not to mention, there's something about that mustache that just really irks me. Although it may seem impossible to make a lamp seem creepy, Lampends' Pokédex entries do just that with what is perhaps the strangest thing you will ever read in a Pokémon game. This ominous Pokémon is feared. Through cities it wanders, searching for the spirits of the fallen. It arrives near the moment of death and steals the spirit from the body. The spirits it absorbs fuel its baleful fire. It hangs around hospitals waiting for people to pass on. Let's just repeat that. Lampent actually waits outside of hospitals for people to die. Imagine being terminally ill and glancing out of the window to see a dozen Lampents floating around, waiting to get first dibs on your soul. Not only is that pretty spooky, but it's also just plain mean in my book. Until Driffloon came along, it never even crossed my mind that balloons could be scary. But take a look at this. It tugs on the hands of children to steal them away. However, it gets pulled around instead. It is whispered that any child who mistakes Driffloon for a balloon and holds onto it could wind up missing. These Pokemon are called signposts for wandering spirits. Children holding them sometimes vanish. Although Pearl's entry stands out as a little contradictory to the others, it's indisputable that Driffloon is in fact trying to kidnap children. What really freaks me out the most, though, is wondering where Driffloon would take its victims. The Pokédex doesn't specify anything about that, which always led me to think when I was younger that it would just carry the kids as high as it could possibly go and just drop them. It really makes me shudder when I think about that. Spiritomb is an odd Pokemon in all sorts of ways. The original method of obtaining one was a seemingly random and cryptic idea, and to this day I still can't wrap my head around it. Step 1. Go to Route 209 and place an odd keystone in the tower. Step 2. Enter the underground and talk to other players a total of 32 times. Step 3. Interact with the Hallowed Tower. A level 25 Spiritomb will appear and a battle will begin immediately. Okay, seriously, if anyone has any idea why you're supposed to specifically talk to people exactly 32 times, please let me know, because I literally can't find anything about this, at all. Once you finally get your hands on one, though, taking a look at the Pokédex reveals some interesting history about it. It was formed by uniting 108 spirits. It has been bound to the odd keystone to keep it from doing any mischief. The Heart Gold Soul Silver entry pretty much sums it up. The rest of them pretty much say the same thing. So basically, Spiritomb is literally a prison for evil spirits. That fact alone wouldn't make it the most horrifying thing ever, but combined with what you had to do originally just to find one, gives it an all-around sense of mystery that makes Spiritomb stand out as one of my favorites. What I love about Dusknoir isn't necessarily what the games say about it, but more so about what I think it is. The antenna on its head captures radio waves from the world of spirits that command it to take people there. It is said to take lost spirits into its pliant body and guide them home. This feared Pokemon is said to travel to worlds unknown. Some even believe that it takes lost spirits along with it. Now, Dusknoir was introduced as the evolution of Dusclops in Generation 4. To get one, you would need to trade a Dusclops that held the item Reaper Cloth. Now, at first, I assumed that it was called a Reaper Cloth to make it sound spooky, since it was an item directly related to a Ghost-type Pokemon. But when I take into account the Pokédex entries about it receiving commands from the spirit world, this leads me to believe that Dusclops is literally turning into some kind of Grim Reaper. That's just my personal speculation on it, but this is what makes Dusknoir a very creepy Pokemon to me. Now, I'm sure many people will probably disagree with why I've placed Bayonet so high on the list, since in concept, Bayonet really is an overdone cliché. Most of these say pretty much the same thing, so I'll sum it up with the Diamond Pearl Platinum entry. A doll that became a Pokemon over its grudge from being junked. It seeks the child that disowned it. Yeah, I'm sure by now most people are pretty desensitized to the idea of creepy toys coming to life. When most people think of dolls coming to life, they'll more than likely think about a lame Halloween special or a cheesy B-grade horror movie, which aren't very scary at all. But ever since I was a kid, the thought of one of my toys coming to life absolutely terrified me. I couldn't even enjoy Toy Story when I was younger. Despite not being based on the most imaginative idea, Bayonet is still a Pokemon that creeps me out nonetheless. Okay, so when I went into Pokemon Y for the first time and ran into one of these, I thought it was adorable and just had to catch it. When I did, I was greeted with this Pokédex entry. According to old tales, these Pokemon are stumps possessed by the spirits of children who died while lost in the forest. Okay, now it's one thing to have a Pokemon that kidnaps children, but to have one that actually is a dead child. And one that died while lost in the woods? That is one of the creepiest ideas for a Pokemon, and I'm really glad Phantom made it into X and Y. Up until now, the majority of reasons I put most of the previous Pokemon on this list was because of how creepy their existence is in a Pokemon game. However, Umask is in an entirely different league of its own, being incredibly terrifying enough no matter what franchise it belonged to. Just take a look at these. These Pokemon arose from spirits of people interred in graves in past ages. Each retains memories of its former life. Each of them carry a mask that used to be its face when it was human. Sometimes they look at it and cry. Do I even need to say anything else? It used to be human, remembers everything, has a mask of its face, even stares at it and cries. This sounds closer to something you'd find in Silent Hill, not Pokemon. Umask easily tops this list, being one of the most disturbing creatures in any video game I've ever played. That's all for today. Thank you all very much for watching, and... Okay, that thing needs to move.